Okay, hello. We are on week 2 of classes. I say thanks for the little bit. I should be falling in there at some point. I love that little jar. Just want to say hello. Hopefully everyone is faring okay. I want to do a little introduction. Thank you for attending this week. I greatly appreciate that. Wait, which one of my shirts? I have an oh my gosh, I love your shirt. Yes, this is my Hawaiian Fun shirt, is what I call it. Um, I also wanted to do a shout out today. I specifically wore my How to Halloween t shirt. They actually gave me a cool little boost on their Facebook page. And I think I got it at Target like 2 years ago. It was when I went to Arizona for the first time. And I was like, I need Hawaiian shirts. I'm going on vacation. But I have my How to Halloween, which I wanted to give them some rep because they did tag me, I was very honored. I love their show. If you happen to be in Michigan, in here I am touching my face and I shouldn't be, but I'm at home. Um, if you happen to be in Michigan in October in Lansing, they have a show just before Halloween. It's usually like either early October or mid October. It depends on when they can get the building. And they have a little weekend show called How to Halloween. And it's kind of like a little mini Halloween celebration, celebrating how to make your own Halloween. And they bring in like maker spaces and people who like to make crafts and make their own costumes. They bring like the local League of Enchantment. They've got this really fantastic DJ. I don't know if it's like a same group of people or the same person, but they play really fun Halloween music all weekend, and I don't get tired of it. I don't know who it is, but shout out to you because keep me entertained. Um, a lot of the booths that are there, they have make and take stations or like demonstrations on. There were cosplayers who had like makeup demonstrations. They had how to make prop stations. I bring my wand station when I'm able to go there, and it's a big hoot, and I love it. And they gave me a shout out with my classes, so I want to say thanks. So if you're in Michigan and get the chance, assuming that they get to have one this year, with everything going on, everything's kind of up in the air. But I wanted to give them a shout out, so I wore their shirt today. Oh yeah, a lot of people end up working like the haunted houses. It is very kid friendly. If you have young ones, they're encouraged to come in costume. As vendors, we are encouraged to bring candy for them to come do trick or treating. So, since I usually have a convention that falls on Halloween, it lets me get my Halloween spirit out and I can do my trick or treating and handing out candy to kids, and I get to dress up in a Halloween costume, and I get that out of my system, which is good. So, it's a lot of fun. Pardon me, it's really dry in my house. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. Oh, no worries. Thank you for taking a watch. So today is going to be a little bit of a hit or miss, depending on who's able to get the supplies. If you are watching this live, if you are watching this on YouTube, thank you very much. Give it a like if you liked it. Leave a comment if you enjoyed the project, or if you have other ideas for projects. I'm always looking for more. Um, Today was a project that we used to do, reminded me in like art camps, called styrofoam block printing. And the finished project should hopefully look something like this. And it's kind of like an easier version of what I would call the lino cut printing, which is, so I've done that before. So I actually did it based on this cool little one that I did. This is a little piece of like thick linoleum. You can get it at the Blick store, and you get special carving tools. It's a little bendy, and then you can take ink and you roll it on top like a big giant stamp, basically, and you then stamp it onto paper, and it looks like, hold on, there we go, like this. So we're going to do something kind of like that, but not using hard to find and expensive materials. Instead, we're going to use like styrofoam plates and permanent markers, because things are hard to get right now, and we're still learning things. Um, Other things that you can use it for, aside from cool art prints to hang on your wall, I actually did this for my Christmas cards 2 years ago. They had some easy cut linoleum stuff, and I designed this little angel, and I did the transfer method that we used in the watercolor project, where I like did all the graphite on the back, and then I did pen over top of it, and I transferred it to this little piece of linoleum, and then I cut it out, and then I used it like a giant stamp, and then I put the picture in a bunch of cards and sent it to all my friends and family. And then they had a little unique piece of artwork that they could hang on their wall. So I took that idea, and we're going to use it on styrofoam. We're just going to draw a picture, just a regular piece of styrofoam. And then we're going to use our paint that we had from the other project. This is literally the same blue that I used from the painting of the nighttime. This is the light blue, because I'm like, oh, it's a pretty color. It reminds me of teal. And I didn't have to go shopping because I didn't want to leave the house. I'm not supposed to, so save on time and space. And this thing's still full of a lot of paint. So we're going to end up doing 2 items. This will be our final one, but we're also going to do a practice one so we can get used to how the styrofoam feels. So, on to our materials. What sort of materials that I have listed for us to have on hand? Obviously, we're going to need the styrofoam. You can use all sorts of various types of styrofoam. There's like fancy styrofoam sheets you can buy on like Amazon. I didn't want to make people have to go and order stuff on like Amazon. I was hoping maybe people might have like plates from picnics eons ago that they're never going to use again. Or maybe they are like me and go to the dollar store and I bought this package for $1. I got these foam trays. I had a picture of this on the Facebook post that I made, and I think I included a picture of it in like the image PDF of the instructions that I linked to. And these are just like food trays. It's like little rectangles. If you have a circular plate, we're just going to cut rectangles out of it. They're going to be about 5 by 7, the size of a postcard. We're not going to be real specific with sizes. It's all pretty much like, what size can you cut out of it? We'll work with it. It's fine. So when I take mine out, these also aren't very thick either, which is why we're not going to use any sort of crazy fancy tools. Like, ooh, it's like a thing you'd get in the lunch line. It's really thin. It's from the dollar store. The fancier like styrofoam sheets you'd get from like Amazon from like the art stores would be thicker, and there are actual like indentation tools and like wooden sticks you can get to like engrave it on. Yeah, these are really thin. So I was like, what are we gonna do? I tried using an ink pen, and that was a little disastrous. It got way too thick of lines and kind of carved right through it if I pressed down too hard. So through my experimentations, I realized we needed 2 very simple tools. A regular Sharpie marker and a fine tip Sharpie marker. In a bright color of your choice. I chose orange because one of my favorite colors. It's bright and I can still see through it. I avoid using the like darker colors like black or dark blue or anything like that, just so if it's brighter, I'll be able to see through it and see if the styrofoam is being indented, which I'll explain in a little bit. The last thing that might be a little foreign was the roller. On my instructions that I have listed below, if you're listening to the recording or if you're watching this live, I see in my chat talking about Sharpies. Yes, I love Sharpies. That's what I first started coloring things in with. In my instructions, I talked about having like a rolling pin that you don't intend to use anymore, especially like if you get paint on it. You're not going to want to put your food on that anymore. If you happen to be near an art supply store, they have these cool like ink rollers. That's usually the preferred one. I happen to have one lying around, so I'm just going to use that. But basically, if you get like a dollar store rolling pin, I almost forgot what it was called. I'm so sorry. a dollar store rolling pin that you can just, the goal is once we put the styrofoam down, we're going to roll over top of it like it's a printing press. And what that's going to do is that's going to evenly distribute our paint onto our page, as opposed to trying to squash it down with our hand, which I tried to do, didn't turn out as nice. So we'll take our little rolling pin and use that. I just have this on hand because I made all those Christmas cards a couple years ago. So I'm just going to use mine. You don't have to have the fancy tools, as long as it's something you can roll. I even wrote down, like, let's say you have a big can of soup. Roll that can of soup over top. As long as it's something you can roll and not worry about getting any extra paint on, it's fine. And then we have our basics. We need our paint palette. This one I would recommend something with like an edge to it, something that you can get a little more wet. We're going to make our paint into more of an ink, so we're going to add some water to it. So you want something that's not going to absorb water. Gotta have our drop cloth, known as the sail paper. For our final pieces where we're going to put them down, I recommended using something like a Bristol board, which is basically like a thick cardstock. You can use pretty much any paper. I actually did my fancy fish prints on just like a nice paper because I was using some fancy ink. I just like the Bristol board because it's a little more sturdy in case I accidentally squish it a little. This is a 9x12 board. Comes in packs of like, what, 50 pages, I think? This one claims 15 sheets, but I'm skeptical. It might be closer to 20. This one says 15, but sure, we'll go with that. But it's nice, it's thick, it's called cardstock. You can even use stuff from like the scrapbooking area. You just want something that the paint's gonna stick to. Nothing slick. And, oh, you'll need your water container. My handy dandy cottage cheese container that's been cleaned out. Got fresh water in it. And the only paintbrush we're going to need is Big Bertha here. In fact, I probably would want something bigger than this, but I don't want to go out and buy one, so I'm going to make do with the big one that I have. And then last but not least, I'm going to have a pair of scissors. Not the fabric scissors, but the craft scissors, so I can cut my paper in half. If you have one of those cool, like, guillotine cutters where you, like, put it down, or one of those slidey cutters, like what you have in schools, feel free to go and use those. I'm just going to use a pair of scissors, because chances are likely my picture is going to be smaller than the piece of paper that I'm going to stick it on, so I can always trim it down. And I think... oh, and of course, paper towel to dab everything in. Now that's everything. And I think with that, I'm going to head to my art space. Oh, I forgot the most important thing. I don't want to get my really cool Hawaiian shirt dirty. So I'm going to go and put on my favorite apron. And try to not hit the microphone this time. Hey, there we go. My IKEA apron. The last thing I'd hate to do would be to get paint on my lovely How to Halloween shirt. I can't just go to the store and buy another one of those. Alright, so let's switch over to the desk. Oh, look at this mess. Let's set up my workshop here. I don't need that just yet. I'm not painting. Everything is everywhere. Alright, I'm going to get 2 of my plates. Now, if you only have 1 plate, don't worry about doing the first one. This is just for practice. This is so we can get used to working with the styrofoam, drawing on it, things like that. Take my scissors. These little edges here, these are gonna drive me crazy. I'm just gonna cut those off. If you're using a regular plate, Try and cut like a rectangle if you can out of it. It doesn't have to be super huge. And I'm going to apologize to all the people who are probably like, oh my gosh, wasteful, this is gonna go in the landfill. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. This is styrofoam. This is not the most green project I have ever done. I'm sorry, styrofoam. Goodbye. Put that in the trash. I am, however, going to get a slightly different color piece of paper so you can see where my piece of styrofoam is. You do not have to worry about this. This is just me for you. I have this lovely brown paper here. Make this easier for you to see. That's better. Put this back on my paper shelf. There we go. Now you can see where I'm drawing, because my table is bright white. Oh, good. I see people. I'm certain that, you know, styrofoam comes in like, styrofoam plates come in huge packs, so you can always practice. And I don't think the side really matters. It's kind of the same on both sides. So I'm just going to use the top side. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 2 lines that go up and down, splitting my styrofoam rectangle into thirds. And I'm pressing down slightly and not going all the way through. Your Sharpie might squeak a little. I apologize to those of you who that might bother. This is a little bit of a noisy project. I'm going to pick this up. And if you look really close, you can see there's a little bit of an indentation. And if you rub your finger over it, you can feel like there's a little bump that goes down. All you need is just that little tiny ridge in there. And if you look at it from the side, you see just a little bit of a bump that goes down. That's what we're looking for. So now, I'm going to take my big Sharpie. I'm going to go to the rightmost panel. Let's see. I apologize for people who are left-handed. I tend to do things right-handed, so I'm trying to think of it from both sides here. So it might be a little hard for our left-handers on this side. I'm going to start at the line. And I'm just going to draw diagonal lines that go down. If you need to rotate your styrofoam, that is okay. And I'm pressing down. It's going to make a little squeak noise. But I'm pressing my marker down into the styrofoam, making a little indent. And I let it dry a little bit. Once it's dry, you can take your thumb, you can take your finger, you can feel those ridges. If you want to be extra fancy, in some of these lines, you can press down little dots. Get decorative. And this is just to see, how does the styrofoam play? What does it do? How does it feel with the marker? And this is mostly just like practicing. How do we use this medium? How does it work with what do we have? See if I can bring this a little closer. Trying to see if I can get the light to shine on the ridges. There we go. When I tilt it this way, you can see a little bit of the glow. Someone coming here asking what we're doing in class today. We are making styrofoam block printing. Currently, we're just practicing with the medium, getting used to it. Let's practice a little bit on the other side, on the left. And with this, we're going to change our lines. We're going to make what's called an S-curve. And starting, I might actually do this with my left hand. I'm slightly ambidextrous here. I'm going to start at my line. And I'm going to make a really long squiggle. And I'm going to make that match all the way. Now I can't draw the same with both hands. Like I can't draw a person, but I can certainly do some simple lines with it. And remember to press down a little bit. It's going to squeak because it is styrofoam. And it's going to leave an indent. And don't worry about if it's going to leave any sort of like big colorful marks. None of these lines are going to show when we do our block printing. None of them will because it's permanent marker. It's just going to stick to the styrofoam. It's not going to get into our paint. Because it's all going to dry by the time we put the paint on. And if you're not sure, you can rub your hand over it, your finger. And one thing you can do is if any of your lines aren't deep enough, you can always take your marker and go back over it. You can always make a line deeper. You can't make it be not deep anymore. That's just not a thing we can do. But if you need to make it deeper, make it a more refined line, you can do that. Let's say I was worried I wasn't pressing down enough with my left hand because it's not as strong as my right hand. You can do that. Right there. There we go. So now we've got a bit of practice with our wider marker. Let's practice with the little marker, because that's going to come in handy. For the little markers, what I like to do with the tinier details. So what I'm going to have us do is in this center area, starting from whichever side is good for you. I'm going to show you the design we're going to do, and then you can start from whichever side you prefer. We're going to make some scales. And those are basically, they look kind of like the bottom of a cloud. And then I'm going to start in the center of each of those cloud lumps and make a half circle. Now this one's a little harder because it's going to cut right into the styrofoam. So you don't have to press as hard. Then you just repeat that center pattern. Start from the center, make a half circle. And look, even mine aren't even terribly perfect, but that's okay. Scales aren't perfect. Ever look at a fish up close? They've been through a lot. And if any of your lines aren't deep enough to you, you can always go back and redraw on them. I'm going to fill this whole section. And I'm just making them big. It's okay if they wobble. It does look like a dinosaur's back, yeah, because they have scales. Or like a lizard. If you happen to poke a hole through, it's okay. I just did that myself. No worries. Just means I went a little rough, but that's what this is. This is practice. We're learning how the styrofoam feels with our pen. This is all just learning how it works. How hard do we have to press down with our marker? And I'm getting down to the bottom. I'll probably just stop there. Or I could just make some lines that go all the way to the bottom. Like that. Ta-da. Yeah, it could be dragon scales, fish scales, mermaid scales. It could be a whole host of things. I'm going to give us a chance to pause and, ooh, dragon mermaids. I'd like to see someone draw that. That sounds pretty cool. Now, once we've done this part, you can even feel with your hands, you can get the texture. This is a very tactile project. You can feel the texture you've created, which is pretty cool. Like, you're like, I made that texture. That's real neat. So, now we're going to watch our textures in action. I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to bring in my drop cloth here, my sail paper. I'm going to bring over my paint palette, my water and my brush, and my paint. I'm going to show you what this does. And feel free to paint along, because we also have to practice how the printing works. Now, before we put the paint on our styrofoam, we gotta have, see, someone's like, ooh, Pringles are on sale. Yes, apparently they were. We gotta have the paper to put our print onto, because we're gonna have to work fast. So while we have this out, let's also get our paper out. So I'm going to get a piece of Bristol board, and I'm going to cut that in half. And I'm not even being very precise. I'm just like, it's vaguely somewhere in the center of the paper, and I'm cutting it. Somewhere that is big enough to fit my practice stamp. So if I set this on here, it fits. Okay. So I'm just going to set that nearby. And I'm going to have my stamp ready to go, because I got to have them close. I'm going to put my brush in the water. Get that all nice and wet. I'm going to get my paint. My palette, and put a glob of paint on there. You don't need a lot. I'm going to take some of the water out of my brush, but still leave it pretty wet. And then while my brush is pretty wet, I'm going to actually mix that into my paint and get a lot of paint on my brush. A lot. Notice how when I put the water into it, it gets really liquidy. It starts to spread out, and when I have it on the plate, it kind of makes these like little spots that come up. We're almost turning it into more of an ink. But it's still kind of an acrylic paint. So now I've covered my whole brush. Now I gotta go work fast. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this paint, I'm going to cover this whole piece of styrofoam and then flip it over onto my piece of paper. Press it down. Here we go. And don't worry, this is why I put the drop cloth down. If I get paint onto it, that's the whole deal. if I get paint onto my fingers, that sometimes happens. I gotta go for a little bit more paint. That happens too. Go all one direction. Then I put my brush in the paint bucket, or the water bucket. Flip it over. Press it down. I'm going to move this so you can see it. At this point, it's kind of stuck to the paper. I'm going to take my little rolling pin and I'm going to press it down. And roll across. And then very carefully pull up from one side, peel it back, and we have a texture print. And that's basically how printmaking works. It's like a big stamp. A little bit messier than using stamps because I just got some on my fingers. But that's basically how printmaking works. And so now you can see all the textures. Now you'll also notice when I did this, the picture's mirrored. It's reversed because we've had to flip it over. So this means that if you are doing text, you have to write all your words backwards. So if you've ever gotten the chance to see like a printing press, if you go to like some of those old-timey historical places where you get to see some of those cool sorts of things, and if you look at the printing press from the underside, all the letters look backwards, and this is why. Because when it goes to print, it prints it in reverse, and so when it prints, the letters will come out correctly. So there we go. That is our first print. Came out pretty good. I like the splotchy nature of printmaking. I think it has such a neat texture to it. So now we're going to move on to our official project, the fish. But first, I have stuff on my fingers. I'm sure you have stuff on your fingers. I hate getting paint on myself. So I'm going to take my hands, I'm going to put them a little bit in the paint water, and I'm going to try and get some of that off. If you need to get up and wash your hands in the sink in the bathroom, now would be a good time. I'm gonna clear my workspace so I can go back to my other way. Yes, this is like the poor man's printing zone. Then what's also cool, so let's say you take some of your water, because we use such a thin paint, and it acted more like an ink, you can kind of clean your styrofoam off a little bit. So it won't build up as much. If we use straight up acrylic, that acrylic would build up in these little ridges so fast you'd lose the ability to do more prints. Also, what would be cool, which let me show you. I didn't bring it out because I didn't think about it. For anyone who is interested, there are actual specific block printing inks made by a company named Speedball. These are actually water soluble, so you can just like put it into like the sink and wash it, which is what I did like with the fish one. I made tons of these little like blueprints, and then I just took this and I put it into like water, and it washed right off. So, if you want to do fancier prints, they do have fancy printmaking ink you can get. We're just using acrylic ink because we have it and it's inexpensive. I have a whole bunch more of these. I should probably make more. It was a lot of fun. Alright, so hopefully we've now cleaned our fingers. And now we're going to go on to our fish. Let me clean my zone here. Move that out of the way. Get back my zone. Oh, I always have to... I see someone tell Mortimer to wash his paws. I have to wash his paws all the time. He's a mud goblin. Okay, so now we're on to the official picture, which is basically a koi in a pond, because I love koi, and it makes such a cute picture. Also very elegant, great to put on your wall, makes a good gift. Once again, cutting out a rectangle just like I did before, about the size of a postcard. Now, this is the part where we might have some happy little accidents, and it's okay. If yours doesn't look exactly like mine, that is okay too. Everyone's fish will be their own. So what I wanted to start with is I like to draw this big like comma shape. And I'll start with the tail, and then we'll come around and make this big shape, and then we'll put the smaller shapes on the inside. So I'll start about halfway down and about 1.5 inches in, so right about here. And you don't even have to press down at first. You can just draw this really lightly. I'm going to curve around. And then I'm going to make this really big kind of loop. And then bring it back. Now looking at this, I've barely, it looks kind of like a funky looking potato. Not gonna lie. I've barely pressed down on my styrofoam. It didn't even squeak. And I'm like, okay, I like this shape. So now I can take it. And I'm gonna press down and trace my line. You might even be able to hear the squeak. Go. So now I've got this cool little indentation. And honestly, that was probably the hardest part of the whole drawing, was putting this down. Everything after this, easy peasy lemon squeezy. So now we're going to put the tail on. And the tail is kind of like a big squishy heart. Oh, I had a question. What is my favorite type of media? My personal favorite media right now is markers, followed by pencils. In between there is inking. Inking is my other favorite thing. But I like, when I get the chance, I like to play around with other stuff. So I've used a lot of different materials and media, which is why I'm like, I like to share all my different things with people. So I'm like, I like to do printmaking. I've randomly done linoprint, I think is what it is, where you carve into linoleum. Keeps my mind fresh. Alright, so we're going to do the tail, and to do that, I'm actually going to rotate this, because it's easier to think of a heart, like upwards, like this. So I'm going to start. Now you can start from the left or the right, whichever works just for you. I'm going to start on the left, and a little bit in on this tiny nub. I'm going to go out and make a soft bend. And And then come back around to the other side of the tail. Now I didn't press down very much. I'm going to press down again. As it squeaks this time. That's going to give me the tail. It looks like a shrimp now. I've drawn a shrimp. Now I want shrimp. I mean, honestly, be like, cool, I made a fried shrimp, we're done. Put a smiley face on it. But I want to draw a koi, because I want some more texture. Oh, I like it's a chicken leg. Yes. It's a chicken leg. Alright, so now I'm going to put on its face zone, which that is located right up here near the front. And it's kind of like I'm just doing a little semicircle up near the front. Someone else that saw was a shrimp. I see the shrimp emote in there. I love shrimps. So up here, I'm going to leave probably about 3/4 of an inch if we're doing measurements. Follow near the end. Do kind of like a little curve with a hook at the end. It's like a really long M. And then I'm going to put 2 oval dots, one on each side. So my fish has eyes. And I'm going to press down while I do that. Now, I'm going to give it the back fin because we're looking at a koi fish from the top. Just going to put a thick bendy line down the top. Probably the last most difficult thing we'll have to do is to put some little fins on the side because we want our little fish to flap around in our pond. Just above where I've put the face line here. I'm going to actually make that a little deeper. I don't think I made it deep enough. I'm going to basically put a little bendy triangle. So up here, just above where I have the face line, I'm going to start drawing a triangle, except it looks like someone kind of punched it in the side. And then it meets the body. So it almost looks kind of like a shark. And then I can turn this over. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Make a little shark fin. So I'm drawing my triangle. It's coming up. It's curving around. And then, oof. Someone punched it in the side. Oh, he's got a tiny fin. Maybe he's like Nemo. That's okay. Still my baby fish. Cool. So now we have all of our big lines. We get to go in and put in our small lines. So the easiest one to do first is we're going to put in his tail fin. And using my small fine tip, yes, like a baby shark, and I'm not going to sing the song. Doodle-doo-doo. No, I'm not going to do it. So on the tail fin here, I'm going to take my small pen and just draw small curving lines. They're going to curve towards the outside edge. As I go towards the center, they become straight, and then they start curving again towards the next outside edge. Now on the little side fins, I'm going to put one small half circle at the corner that's closest to the face on each of them. Let's see if I can move this a little closer. Some detail going. There we go. Because these lines are a little thinner. And then coming out of this half circle, put some small lines. I might only need like 3 of them. 3 or 4. Not a lot. And always feel free to rotate the styrofoam. Yeah. I like drawing fins, they're fun. Now for the long and tedious part, we're going to give our fish scales, but it's going to give a really nice texture when we do our print. So starting up here at the top, starting from whichever side you prefer, I'm going to do a bunch of half circles. Just draw in lightly. They don't have to be real deep. And they don't have to be real tiny either. They can be pretty big. Because remember, this is just an artistic interpretation of a koi. We're not going for realism here. You get the general idea that this is a koi. And then for each row, I always pick one of the scales. I'm just going to start in the center, then draw a half circle that goes to the center of the one next to it. So I get this cool cascading effect. So in a way, we're also learning how to draw scales today. These are scales, just like we did in the practice one. This is why I had us draw all those different textures, so we'd have practice. And when you practice it in one, you'll get faster. And also, just as a reminder, if for some reason your hand starts to feel like it's cramping a little, because I hold the pen with a death grip, stretch your hand, push it back, push it down, push it back, push it down. Clench, unclench, clench, unclench. Wiggle your fingers. Rotate your wrist. And then you can go back to working on your drawing. Never ever force your hand to draw when you're in pain. That'll just lead to problems later. And sometimes when you're working with a difficult material like styrofoam, you'll have the tendency to clench your hand. And it's okay to stop and take a break and take care of your hand. Take care of your hands. It's important. Don't be like me and get tendinitis. It's a bad idea. Don't recommend it. Use proper ergonomics. And I'll pause for a moment to let everyone kind of catch up there. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can always just skip ahead to the point where I'll move this to the next part. Now, right now, we just have a plain fish who's just kind of floating in the ether, not doing anything. So what I like to do is I'll add a little background, and the type of background I like to add looks like ripples on a pond. And for this, I'm just going to use my fine tip pen, and it's like adding circles. Just big circles behind it. And if my circles run into each other, that's okay. Sometimes circles on the water run into each other all the time. That's how ripples on a pond work. And they don't have to even connect either. Just to kind of be the vague idea. And at this point, this is when we check our final textures. Go over it with your hands. Make sure everything is where it needs to be. Can you feel all the ridges? Take a look at it in the light. I think mine looks pretty good. About where, see, I like this one a little better because I drew it more centered. I'm going to move my camera back up now. I'll view them a lap there. So when I drew the first one, I drew him a little high. Like, I have all this extra space down here. But now, he's a little more centered. Practice makes perfect. So now, it's time for the final block printing. Let's see if this experiment works. I'm gonna get back out my drop cloth. I'm gonna make sure my markers are capped, put away. Don't want those to dry out. Gonna get my printing paper ready to go. This is the hard part about the block printing, is everything has to be ready because it's got to be fast. I'm gonna add some more paint to my palette. Make it last a while. I'm gonna grab some more water. I'm gonna take a little bit out of my brush, but still leave my brush relatively wet. And then mix up my ink/paint. I have to add a little more water. Make it nice and liquidy. Not too liquidy, because you don't want it to not stick to the styrofoam, but you don't want it to be like pure acrylic, because then it won't leave the styrofoam. You want it to, get onto the paper. So see how it's kind of not sticking to my paint palette, which is good. A little more liquidy. There we go. Not sticking. There we go. Good. All right. My paintbrush is coated. Let's do this printing. Take my brush. And I'm gonna coat this as much as I can. Sometimes I just brush it in one direction so I don't get too many stripes. Put my brush in the water, flip this over, gently lay it down, and now it's time for the squishing. I like to go one direction with the, it's called a brayer, but I like to call it the roller, and then I'll go the other way. And then I'll get the other half. And then I'll try and get the center. And then I can pick up the paper with my clean hand and gently peel away. Oh, look at that. Look at that print. That's beautiful. It's a little blotchy, but that fish, that came out great. That's what I wanted to see. That's perfect. Look at that lovely fish. Now I just gotta wait for my paint to dry. And that is block printing. Oh yeah, see I smudged it up a little bit here, but you know what? That's okay. That's just a natural mistake that happens in block printing. That means it's unique, special. It's the one and only. And then, because I might want to use this again later, I'm gonna wet down my paper towel, and I'm gonna try and clean out my styrofoam. This one came out really good. I liked this one. So with my wet paper towel, I'm gonna try and clean out my grooves a little bit so they don't get a buildup of paint, because it's still wet. And then dry that off. Alright. And what's nice is because the styrofoam, I probably could just take this into the bathroom and just put it underneath the water faucet and it'd be fine. Just don't fold it in half, it will snap, it is made of styrofoam. But now, if you've got extra styrofoam, you can make other block prints. You can make other designs. This was just the start. You can make ones for holidays. You can make them in shapes. Imagine cutting one in the shape of a shield and then making a little heraldry. How cool would that be? That was another idea that I had, but I want to do something nice and calming with a fish, because I like fish. Oh, thank you, Trish, for the bits. Oh, I love that. But yeah, see, now my little block print, it's all nice and clean. I got most of the ink out of the ridge here, and it is ready for another printing. I could make more of these if I wanted. And that's the fun part about block printing. This is ye old printer. Before we had printers. It's Karmada. Alright, so with that, we are done with our project. And I will head back to my video. Alright, so how was that? Hopefully it wasn't too chaotic for those following along at home live. I tried to go as slow as I could this time. I know it was a little different than what we did the past couple ones. So, but here I'll show off mine. Here is my koi print, which honestly, you know what? That was pretty good. Like this is an actual like lino print. And then here is one made with styrofoam, and that's pretty darn good for being made with a dollar store styrofoam tray. So, and I made it with a tray and some Sharpies and some acrylic paint. So that's pretty cool. So this is things that you can do at home and make really cool, like professional looking art. And what's cool is that you could actually use stuff like this, and you could make this like holiday cards. You could make art prints to give to your family. You could, if like let's say your school has an art show, you could do really cool stuff with this. You can push the limits. You can practice even more. If you have a whole stack of these, practice. If printmaking is something that you found really interesting, practice more of it. I'm trying to show as many different types of art styles and media to see what stokes people's fires. Because that's really the only way we can find out what art we like to do. If we only do one type of art all the time, how do we know what we like? So, here we go. I don't know if I'll get around to doing any 3D clay art. We'll see. I do have some Sculpey floating around, but I don't know if I can do that in a timely manner, but we'll see. Uh, so thank you all for coming to this class. The video, if you're watching it live, I'm hoping to have them uploaded on Fridays, is my goal, as I realized how long they take to upload. I will not try to upload it immediately today, as it interfered with a bunch of other stuff on my computer. So, hopefully this should go up on Friday. And the next class will happen on Thursday. This is being recorded on Wednesday. I believe it is March 25th. So tomorrow, March 26th, will be the next class. And I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to stop recording for a moment. If you are watching this on YouTube, I want to say thank you for giving this a watch. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. If you have any other ideas for classes, let me know. Leave a comment below. And thank you very much.